Welcome, friends, to another Whiskey Me live tasting. East London Liquor Company, East London Single Malt. This is an exciting one. I'm going to tread water for a few more seconds as more of you fill up into the room. That's it. There's plenty more space at the back. Come on in. No fighting, no jostling. Take it easy. Grab your whiskey, grab a glass, and settle down. I am joined tonight by Alex Warpole, who is the founder of East London Liquor Company. Always good to get a founder on board because they know everything that goes on, or at least Alex thinks he does. And we're going to get a full sort of inside track on the distillery and all the relevant information, and obviously have a taste of the spirit too, which is, I've already tasted it, I'll be honest with you, and it's delicious. So without further ado, Alex, how do you, mate?
Hey, how you doing? Good.
And as you can see, everyone, he is broadcasting live from a real life distillery, which is pretty cool. Extra points to you. So this is East London Liquor Company behind you. Well, you're inside it, right?
Yeah, welcome to East London.
It's such a cool space because you're on the bar right now, right? And
I'm facing the customers, but the stills are behind me.
Yeah. So if you came in, if I walked into the East London Liquor Company and I wanted to order a drink, this is more or less what I'd be faced with, except probably you wouldn't be behind the bar. There'd be a bartender there.
You got really unlucky at being behind the
bar. But this is one of the things that makes this distillery so cool, because it's so unusual to be able to sort of sit down, have a drink, and look at stills and distillation and whiskey making and gin making and all the other stuff that you make going on in the background. It's just brilliantly designed, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's the whole point was to be as transparent as possible, that you can come and sit at the bar and watch us make what you're drinking.
Yeah.
And we have tours, 3-4 days a week, and quite a lot of public tours. People say, "So where do you actually make it?" I'm like, no, it's all there.
Yeah.
And I think there's quite a lot of surprise that it all happens in this tiny little space. But yeah, it's lovely to be able to have people in the space, both sides.
Yeah, maybe one day you'll be so big that this will just be kind of like the token distillery. We still make stuff here, but just kind of experimental things. And then there'll be some big behemoth distillery elsewhere that's pumping out thousands of liters of alcohol a minute.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. Well, look, maybe let's start at the start. Do you want to give us a sort of introduction to East London Liquor Company and maybe the sort of story behind its forming and all that?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I set the business up 7.5 years ago now. My background was bartending, and it was very much a kind of, how do we make a locals distillery? How do we champion what it means to be a local London distillery? And how do we make, great booze and really champion this idea of being really accessible, affordable, and transparent about what we do. We've been amazingly lucky. Our local accounts started really supporting and backing what we've been doing, and it's grown from those early days a fair bit. But I think the kind of ethos is the same, good booze basically, and at a price point, at a positioning where people can appreciate it, understand it, get their heads around it. And I think as we grow and scale the whiskey part, as this tonight's about whiskey, we really want to make sure that as our whiskey grows and develops, we're able to pass the kind of scaling benefits of that on to the customer in terms of how we make it accessible, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you showed me around, it must be the best part of 6 or 7 years ago. And one of the things that struck me, and yeah, like you say, this is a whiskey tasting, but we were talking about gin at the time, is that your price sensitivity and your positioning of products in the market, when everyone else was launching craft gins at sort of £40 a bottle, you were pricing really competitively and still producing great quality liquid, because you saw the benefit in actually selling a good product for a good value price and selling more of it as a result, rather than it just being a product that sits on a back bar and goes dusty. It's something that bartenders will use every day.
Absolutely, yeah, that's totally it. I think for us it was this, how do you kind of, it's that sort of decent booze for decent people at decent prices that just seems like such a natural place to be. And Yeah, I mean, we went through a little bit of a rebrand last year, and I think it was really just us trying to search for a better articulation of what we've always been about. The liquid is the same, the people are the same, but we wanted to better articulate this idea of being very much transparent, and it is what it says on the bottle, kind of Ron Seal of gin, if you like, and for those that are old enough to get that. But I think the meaning of words like artisanal and craft and all that, they've been eroded, and it's nice to kind of sort of sidestep that space and just try to sit in the kind of we just make good gin space. And there's no catch. It's not inferior because it's well priced. It's just really good and really well priced. And that's an interesting tension to hold when, particularly in England, people infer quality by price and the opposite.
So true. Yeah, so true. So tell me about the whiskey evolution then, because although obviously you can anyone can turn around a gin pretty quickly. Like you don't have to wait around too much to make one. A little bit of skill involved, obviously, but whiskey is a much sort of more long-term project. It was always on the cards, right, from day one.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, in terms of the journey of our whiskey, we were very lucky to be. Our team was able to go and brew at Crate, which was a brewery down the road, a kilometre or so away. And then this is the first liquid that's been brewed in our own brew house over there. So it's very much grain to glass in the same space now. We scaled our production up when we bought a larger 2,000 litre stripping still and put a brew house in here. So I mean, within 6 months of making gin, we were making whiskey. Andy, who's on pat leave, Andy Mooney, looks after our whiskey program. It was very much a kind of how do we try to find our groove with a rye and a single malt, and what experimentation can we do with those, but also what other experimentation can we do outside those two kind of sort of grooves, if you like. And it's been a lot of fun because there was really no remit to start with about what we make. It was more trying to find what is the characteristic, what makes our London rye different, and how do we try and how do we experiment with a single malt program which allows us to develop something which complements the rye. Two very different liquids, but so most of the casks we lay down are one or the other.
Yeah. So 2 whiskies today: a rye, London rye, and an East London single malt. The malt sort of seems like a fairly natural choice given proximity to Scotland and thirst for malt whiskey. I mean, obviously there is a demand for rye whiskey as well, but rye is not an inherently British or English type of whiskey. So where was the sort of decision or the idea to go with rye? Where did that come from?
I mean, I've long been an admirer of the American rye movement, and I think it was really how do we take that grain, which is incredibly difficult to brew with. How do we try and harness that potential flavor profile in something that we would want to drink? And I think that's the fun bit. Is it's spicy. It's that kind of sort of licking tarmac kind of at its best, that kind of real kind of got bite to it. But equally, if your cask program is interesting, then for us, it's that balance of the spice with something else. How do you get all those like stone fruits, stewed stone fruits, and the spice, and how does that develop in something that just doesn't sit in the one dimensional element of what rye can be? And that's the fun bit of the experimentation with the rye, is how do you develop rye into something else? It's
such an interesting spirit category, isn't it? I'm with you. So often when I write down tasting notes for rye, I look back at them, I'm like, it doesn't seem very complimentary, but it is delicious, right? It's just that it all sounds like kind of like pepper and chili and green and nutty and spicy and all those kind of things. But I mean, and I guess it can be divisive. I don't think I know of anyone who doesn't like rye, but I'm sure there must be people out there. But there's something in that kind of potency of the character of rye that is really endearing, I think, and of course in mixed drinks as well. When you made the London rye, was the sort of intention for it to be more on the sipping side or more on the mixing side, or like a bit of both?
A bit of both. I think we want people to do what they feel most at home with the liquid, whether it's single malt or the rye. We've got single malt in a cocktail on the bar here at the moment, which is delicious. But yeah, I think the rye appeals to the bartending community because it's got a certain degree of versatility because of its pokiness, both in terms of alcohol content, but also in terms of flavor. And yeah, you're right. You know, the kind of green pepper and the kind of the spicy tobacco-y kind of flavor profiles that you get are not always particularly positive until you got the glass in your hand, and then people realize that these are all good things.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm with you on that. So the single malt, what's like when you set out to make, because it's East London Single Malt, what's the sort of intention there in terms of the style? What are you looking to pull out of the cereal or pull out of the maturation component that you want to sort of imbue into this London malt? Because in a way, you're sort of creating a category of spirit, aren't you? I mean, there are other London distilleries and what have you, but you're certainly one of the first and like to be producing single malt. So there's a responsibility in a way with that, right? So what's the goal with it, do you think? And like both in the short term and the long term, because of course, presumably you're sitting on stock still that are going to continue to mature, and eventually we'll see, an 8-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever, 15-year-old or and so forth.
I guess the intention is really sort of twofold. One, to make it very recognisably a single malt. We use 100% malted barley. It's all from Great River in Norfolk, and it's very much a kind of sort of classic approach. We do a 5-day fermentation. It's all open top, and then we use kind of a little bit of saison yeast in there, which just gives that kind of lovely kind of stewed apple tropical element to it. I think in terms of taste, and we'll get to tasting it in a minute, and I don't want to preempt it too much, but I think in terms of intention, it's is it classically a single malt in one sense? Do you get that kind of, we were talking earlier about that sort of dairy milk, digestive bit, which you kind of expect with a single malt. And then how do you then surprise the drinker? How do you give them something else that, one, is surprising, but also two, makes you want to go back and have another sip and another sip? And because we use the swan neck still with that downward angle for first whiskey we've released using that, the sort of bolder, heavier flavor profiles coming through on the first run there, and that really gives us the opportunity to give that sort of a little bit of spice, but also a little bit of fruit notes that really give the finish something quite different. So, but yeah, when we taste it, I hope everyone watching and drinking will have. I'd love to hear people's feedback, not only on the nose and on the palate, but how that then develops.
Oh, you'll get that. I promise that much. They'll give you the feedback. Won't you guys and girls? Yeah. So I mean, I've already tasted it, obviously, before today and a little bit today as well. And I think you're right. I mean, it's this sort, like you say, you want it to be identifiable as a single malt, but then you also, in a sense, want it to be something as a point of difference as well, and that makes it stand out. Yeah. And I think it's got that. I mean, I think your use of casks is interesting because there's various different types of casks gone in there, right? Do you want to run us through the different ones that you're using?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, it sort of starts off in a combination of smaller casks, so Sonoma, bourbon, and rye, and then this is about sort of 6 to 8 months, and then we transfer it to larger casks.
What size are the Sonoma, bourbon, and rye? Because they've actually moved over to larger casks entirely now, I think.
So they're a sort of mix of 30 to 60 litres. But
right, okay.
Then move it on to the larger casks after the first sort of 6 to 8 months. What that really means is you get the interesting bit really about this is how the red wine interacts with everything else. Because there's rye casks, there's bourbon casks, and there's red wine casks in essence, although there's a couple of others as well. And the red wine gives just enough fruit to lift the finish slightly differently. So you don't really notice the red wine on the nose so much, but you really do notice it on the finish. And I guess that's, Andy's magic is not only in distillation with a distilling team, but really in then the blending process of how that is then put together.
Yeah.
And I think, all these casks in isolation are probably have the potential to be very easily overused. And so to find that balance of rye, bourbon, and red wine as a kind of trio of that the whiskey journeys through is quite interesting.
And do you think in future releases you will attempt to sort of stick to that same balance of casks, or do you see each release as being its own sort of unique expression and like sort of going through an evolution of style to get to where you eventually are going to be, a decade into the future, for example?
I think there will always be an element of experimentation, but I think our single malts will slowly find their groove. and that's certainly the intention, is to find a flavor profile that we can finesse, we can hone, we can develop, but also we've got the opportunity for Andy and the team to kind of play with things to have points of difference. So it's not just 2023, 24 single malt, and they're all very similar, but there are points of difference which give our drinkers the opportunity to get something new and different.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go on. No, you go. This is your stage, not mine.
We make a conscious decision not to put a number on the bottle in terms of age. Maybe we will in the future. I can't see it short term. I think it's trying to pull people away from how long, but more how and what. And that, to me, is what makes the conversation interesting. And I think, the feedback at the whiskey show was, people didn't realize how young it was till we told them, and we tried to get them tasting it first. And I think there's a lot of, there is some preconception about color and age and quality. And so it's nice to be in a position where we can positively provoke people to try and engage and chat.
I also think that part of the reason why a lot of perception on age and maturation time is skewed in the sort of commonly is that a lot of the whiskies we try from Scotland, which are the sort of basis for comparison, are aged 12 years or 10 years or whatever, but they're in second fill casks for the duration of that, or even older casks, inactive casks. Whereas what we're seeing now is that younger distilleries can put out 3, 4, 5-year-old liquid in active casks, and you don't get the whole gamut of maturation characteristics in that shorter period of time. You don't necessarily get all those sort of long oxidative effects that you might get with 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But with an active cask, you do get a lot of flavor out of it, and you can have a perfectly palatable, drinkable whiskey that's quite a long way from new make spirit after 3 or 4 years time. You put it in a second fill cask, a refill, and you're not going to get that. You're going to be 2 notches away from new make, and you need another 10 years on that thing. So that's what I think is really interesting about what younger distilleries are doing with casks.
Yeah, and I think the more people understand what the process is, that the yeast strains make such a difference, fermentation time, mash bill, all these things, then suddenly, hopefully, people will become more interested in the stuff that really matters. And I think, what's lovely for us is that, because we've been making whiskey 6 months after we started, we were making whiskey. Thanks, Phil. Sorry, I've just seen your message. What's lovely is that we've got this this kind of community of people that drink our gin, even though we're making whiskey as long as we're making gin, but actually because we've been drip feeding the releases, because that's all we've had initially, we're finding that we're pulling people across from who love our gin and go, okay, well, I'm not really a whiskey drinker, but I want to try it because I love your gin. And so it's that kind of cross-pollination of gin and rum and vodka drinkers into a category that they might not have otherwise tried because they're either intimidated by it or put off by it, or, so as well as, having a core whiskey lovers audience, it's lovely to be able to gently tease people away from other things we do into whiskey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your brand loyalty sort of extends as far as like people shift spirit categories just to try to see what you're doing, and that's cool. I mean, you've got a cool brand. Like it's obviously quite different, more younger styled and fresher than the sort of traditional whiskey brands. I mean, a bit like Whiskey Me in a way in that sense, bright colors and all that sort of stuff. We're all for that as well. And so it stands out and it's cool, and it's very East London as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea was always to sort of articulate as well as we could what we stood for, and in our current guise, it feels like it's really resonating. So
yeah, awesome. Right, let's taste some more. In my case, like I seem to be dreadful at holding back these days. I used to be able to wait, but
I was on a beer, so I didn't start on whiskey. But I'm
nice, cool. So I'm going to pour a little bit more in my glass. And yeah, please, everyone, do share your tasting notes. I'm going to stick a few up that we've already had, but if you've got any you want to share, then that's the time to do it. Biscuit aroma, which you've already mentioned you want that digestive biscuit kind of characteristic. We put on the label a gingerbread man and a muffin, which sort of covered off some of that biscuity. I think it was a chocolate muffin. That was the kind of direction we were heading with it, and a cherry as well. Better than many bourbons I've seen.
Muffin, it's definitely there.
Yeah. Yeah. Licorice as well. 48% as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm please add a drop of water once you've had it.
Yeah,
it's had it neat. Yeah, I mean the water does kind of a lovely. Yeah, it opens it up in a different way.
Yeah, 48% is reasonably strong. I mean, what's the sort of decision? Where's that come from? The idea was that it's a good sipping strength, but then you can dilute if you want to. I guess is the idea.
It leaves the dilution optional to the drinker rather than having it as a must.
Yeah,
I think at 47 to 48%, it feels like you get enough. There's enough sort of structure and heat and strength to underpin all that biscuity, chocolatey notes that then develop into spice. I think if you take it down to the mid 40s, you lose finish in terms of finding all that lovely kind of spice notes.
Yeah, I haven't got any water. I'm just going to get some quickly. Oh yeah, I tell you what, the water brings out some citrus notes, and Werner just nailed it. I get a nice lemony. There's still a touch of chocolate there as well, I think. Yeah.
I mean, what's lovely is that there's almost like that kind of honey, almost a honey note that comes through. And that's, the second distillation that's column just allows that lighter floral flavor profile that really comes through, particularly with water. A little bit of dilution.
There's your honey, Drambuie.
Oh, Edward Mellor. Thanks, mate. It's good to read.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's a couple of people sort of saying apprehensive, unprepared, prepared to be underwhelmed, that sort of thing. I guess this is one of the things that you get with, it's a younger malt, and can be a bit scary, it seems, for some people going into it, knowing it's sort of 3, 4, 5 years old or whatever. But it's good to challenge those preconceptions, right?
Well, it's great that we've got this opportunity, this platform to drink with, all these subscribers. It's a privilege, really, to be able to, do something like this, which, pre-COVID, people probably have not been so happy to jump on StreamYard and have a chat about whiskey, but it's brilliant.
It's true. It seems like it's kind of changed the world in a bit, in the sense that these kind of tastings are still going on, and ours, speaking from our experience, are growing. Because it is, I think we've just got a lot better at working out how to manage this sort of dynamic online with comments and tastings and all that sort of thing. Everyone understands the etiquette of things and the process, and when a tasting goes on too long or too short and all that sort of stuff. And it works quite well. Yeah,
I mean, we certainly learned the hard way. I was doing a martini masterclass for a bunch of bartenders in LA just after lockdown started, and mistakes along the way.
Yeah. But I think the real beauty of this is there's 41 people watching right now. It'll go up and down throughout the course of the tasting, and we'll have 200 people, 300 people have watched it by the time we finish, watch some part of it. It's really difficult to get that many people in a room with the same drink, and expensive as well, to get everyone in the same room with the same drink in the same place, all organized and everything. And we can all do this and take notes all from the comfort of our home. So, even once COVID hopefully sort of fades away, I don't really see this kind of tasting fading with it. Dark cherry.
Dark cherry. And Roxy music. There you go.
Roxy music. Actually, if this was a song, what song would it be? It'd have to be Chaz and Dave, right? being East London.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Right. So if we want to come visit, where are you exactly? What's the nearest tube station?
So Mile End, walk up in 10, 12 minutes or get the bus. It's 2 or 3 stops. We're just on the south side of Victoria Park. We've got a kind of lovely bar, as you can see, bottle shop, Royale, running a food pop-up in the restaurant, which is delicious. So, it's the full thing. Come and do a tour, tasting, whiskey or gin tour, and then stay at the bar, proper bar up and have a few martinis or old fashions and,
And food as well, right?
And food, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, it sounds like a very tempting prospect. And I'm very much overdue a revisit myself. I was actually unpacking some stuff out of a load of booze out of a box just earlier, and I just reached a hand and pulled out a bottle of your Demerara rum.
Oh, okay.
That I think it was the first ever bottling you did.
Right.
It's never been opened. Is it worth a small fortune now? Am I a millionaire? Or
I'm afraid no. Still great, but I'm not sure. Unaged statemented Demerara rum is.
I should just crack it and drink it, right?
You should totally crack it and drink it. Some pecan bitters, maple syrup, rum old fashioned.
Oh,
bang.
All right, sold. Awesome stuff. Cool. Well, have we got any more questions here? Let's just put a few more tasting notes up since they're very complimentary. Peppery finish. I mean, I get the pepper as well. Less so now. I've diluted it, of course, because it's not strong. But I think in its undiluted form, it's got a lovely prickly spice to it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes high strength can be hot and horrible, and other times it's tactile and peppery and lovely, and it provides structure. And I think you've got that in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ABV is really there to underpin and showcase something else. It's not there for the sake of it. I think, what the lovely change when you add water and it goes from spice to that kind of clovery, honey, floral, that comes up. That's the kind of joy of playing with water once you get it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And you've sold a bottle there, I think, which is good.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Probably will now. Bit non-committal, but All right, cool. Alex, thanks so much for your time. And,
thanks for having us, Tristan. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And let's make sure we return with future releases. Maybe do the rye next time.
Yeah, great.
That'd be cool. All right, cool. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Where can we buy? Oh, hello, Kerry. Yeah, okay. Asking the right questions.
On Master Malt, Whiskey Exchange, I believe 31 Dover as well. Otherwise, on our own website, click on eastlondonliquorcompany.com, the shop loads, and grab yourself a bottle of single malt. Or come in person, have a tour, and leave with a bottle in your bag. So, yeah. Thanks for the
And we are selling pouches of it. More, if you want another pouch, then we're selling them through the Whiskey Me website. No bottles, but pouches. So head over there. Good stuff. Cool. All right. Until next time. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye-bye.